Still wearing my mask, as you can see. And I've had a lot of telephone conversations recently, being stuck at home like the rest of us. So a friend of mine suggested that I talk about Congress's responsibility when we're involved in a free market situation. Whereas, Congress believes in a free market situation, Americans in general believe in a free market situations. I never realized the extent to which China had taken over on manufacturing. When I thought of manufacturing, I thought of, automobile factories, maybe electronics, those kinds of things. Definitely the whole garment industry. There wasn't a piece of clothing that I owned that didn't say made in China. But I never thought about the pharmaceutical industry until my friend opened my eyes up and we talked about pharmaceuticals and the impact that China has on the pharmaceutical industry and the magnitude of the incursion, of the size, of the amount of work they were doing for the pharmaceutical industry. So once you get a handle on the magnitude and the size of the work that China is doing for the pharmaceutical industry, you then realize that in certain cases, our government should not necessarily allow a free market in a particular industry, like pharmaceuticals. Why did Congress allow most of our pharmaceutical companies to set up facilities in China, thereby assuring large problems when a major catastrophe like COVID-19 occurs? Medicines, vaccines, vitamins, and drugs are a critical component of Americans' health care. Think about that. Was the belief in a free market worth putting our population in the position we find ourselves in now? I say no. I say no. And here's the problem, Congress. Our representatives did not think outside the box. I'll bet not one of them ever considered what would happen here if China was hit by some catastrophic event. Could have been anything, but Congress never thought about it, and that's what's so sad. So the pharmaceutical companies made a profit, and now Americans are paying for those profits with their lives. This is the worst example of an unintended consequence. Sure, I'm sitting here after the fact pointing fingers at many who are considered brilliant for finding a way to improve the profits of their companies by outsourcing their manufacturing. They omitted a critical element of the plan: backup. Now, we are a free country. We believe in many freedoms, but our representatives, congressmen, should have at the very least stepped up to protect the lives and futures of its constituents. Wiping out their jobs in a rush to profit is not one of those listed freedoms. It's sad when you think about it. If somebody in Congress had really thought about what could happen if we did not back up our production lines in the U.S., what could really happen? Did anybody think about that? And we know why the companies don't have a backup, because backups cost money. So if the whole process that we're involved in costs X, and a backup costs Y, which is to say Y is only 10% of X, so that means if it's a $10 million deal, Y is costing $1 million. So companies are not prepared to have backups unless it's a critical situation. But if you look at Boeing, two planes went down because they didn't have the proper backups in their software. So backups were important. Nobody thought about it. And now we're sitting here fighting the battle of our lives. And as an addendum to this topic, if drugs are manufactured in a plant that the FDA finds to be unacceptable or, filthy or is not meeting the proper specifications for the production of these drugs, then you can't ship them into the United States. You might be able to sell them in some other third world country or something, but you won't be able to sell them in the U.S. So if we have something like that in place, I see no reason why we can't have backups in place. It's time to talk about something else. Yesterday, President Trump had to sign an order to prevent price gouging and hoarding. People have been hoarding these things, and then they attempt to sell them at ridiculous prices. The people that have these masks and the people that have been chosen to distribute these masks have been price gouging like crazy. There's a story about a guy in Brooklyn that had hundreds of thousands of masks and gowns and all kinds of medical supply, and he was charging 50 times what the market called for, and the hospitals are paying it. Masks that used to cost 10 cents a piece are going for $5 and $10 a piece. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So President Trump took action and signed an executive order against that. And I'm not sure what the penalties are in that order, but I am glad he signed it. And if these people are caught, it shouldn't be just, we're taking the merchandise away and we'll give you a fair price. Should we be taking the merchandise away, you're getting nothing, and maybe we'll send you off to jail for a year or two. How about that? Well, it's pretty sad that we have a mentality in this country that the buck is the most important thing in life. Also, yesterday I mentioned something about the IRS. I said that Social Security recipients would have to file a simplified tax form in order to collect the relief check. That's been rescinded. Social Security recipients won't need to file any form to receive their coronavirus relief check. Instead, their payment will be automatically deposited in their bank accounts. That's what the Treasury Department and the Internal Revenue Service today said. Well, I think that's enough for today. Thanks for watching.